Twitch Technicolor by Newman. Originally published in the March-April 1989 issue of Interzone magazine. Republished in two anthologies, Best New Horror in 1990 and Interzone, the fifth anthology, in 1991. It then appeared in two collections of the author's stories, the original Dr. Shade and Other Stories in 1994 and The Nightmare in 2015. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel, Quasar Spectra. Twitch Technicolor. Playing the buttons was all well and good, but Monty thought sometimes you had to get your hands in the color. He had Bela Lugosi frame-frozen in mid-snarl, stretched black and white over the video easel, wooden stake jutting. Patiently, he combined film overlays in his plastet. Red was the key here. People like red best of all, and there would have to be a lot of it in the Dracula remix. It was integral to the property, perhaps a major factor in its lingering appeal. Finally satisfied, he inserted the plastet into the assessor and sat back while the machine digitally encoded the precise shade that had struck him as proper. When it was done, the assessor pinged like an antique oven, and Monty plucked the now-primed squirt stylo from its light well. He squeezed a blob of red onto the tip of his forefinger and examined it. It was fine. Then he dabbed the electronic image analog with the stylo, dribbling red between the reproduction lines. The monochrome filled in, and gore gushed from the dead actor's starched shirt front. The film looked better already. It was the personal touch that distinguished the Monty video product from the competition's all-machine enhanced remix jobs. He plugged the stylo and noticed phantom rinds of red under his nails. His hand looked as though it belonged to a murderer. He shook his fingers and the red vanished in a static crackle. He adjusted the easel to give him a screen view and assessed his handiwork. He keyed Advance, and the film slow-forwarded a few frames. Lugosi completed his snarl, his hand clawed at the stake. Blood flowed freely. The red grew, a blob in the center of the image. It was fine. Monty keyed Save, and the color took. The vampire's glowing eyes and skullhead cufflinks lit up, the exact red of the blood on his chest and about his mouth. Michaelis Monty could remember the beginnings of the remix business, the ineffectually colorized films of the 80s. He had been among the first to test the potential of image analog encoding, the process that enabled a skilled remix man to have an original moving picture reduced by the assessor to a particle chain of information bits and then rebuilt again in accordance with his own vision. With his own technologies, he had stolen the march on the majors, resisted many an attempted corporate rape, won all the Dickey Awards going, and marked out Ayatollah's share of the marketplace. Monty Video's Dracula was already a Q seller on advance orders. Securing the rights from the schizoid corporate descendants of Bram Stoker, Universal Studios, Hammer Films, the BBC, and about 20 others who had dipped their claws into the property had been a lengthy and costly battle. With such an important acquisition, Monty might in any case have taken the time to handle the remix himself. Thanks to the troubles, he was being forced to do the hands-on work personally. He was still the primo uno in the business. Trevor, Ruby G, Considine, and now Tarnavero. All remaindered. Someone had it in for his remix men, or was trying for a stranglehold on Monty Video. He keyed Proceed, and the assessor took over, absorbing Monty's decisions, replacing the drab grays of the original with day-glow colors. He liked to think that Montevideo's Dracula was the movie Todd Browning would have turned out in 1930 if he had been free from the censorship requirements of the day and had access to unlimited technical resources. Browning had been forced to have Van Helsing stake Dracula off-screen, with only a tame groan to mark the villain's death, but now the anticlimax could be fixed. Lugosi floundered through the vaulted crypt, eyes aflame like an electric antichrist, pushing aside curtains of butterfly wings stained glass cobweb, recoiling from a succession of violently violet neon crucifixes. Then the vampire was down, and Peter Cushing was on top of him, hammering furiously, driving in deeper the killing stake. Actually, Edward Van Sloan had played Van Helsing to Lugosi's Count Dracula, but since nobody remembered him anymore, Monty had decided to mix in Cushing's definitive performance from the 1958 version. In fact, aside from Lugosi and Dwight Frye as the fly-eating Renfield, he had recast the whole film. James Dean as Jonathan Harker, Marilyn Monroe as the victim-cum-vampirette Lucy, and Meryl Streep as the heroine Mina. He'd even stirred in Humphrey Bogart as the comic Cockney asylum attendant. There weren't enough David Manners or Helen Chandler fans to make a dent in the marketplace, and Monty was always in favor of anything that added to the commercial afterlife of a property. His instincts had made him a rich man, rich enough to afford an unparalleled fine art collection, 3D religious postcards, Popster necrophiliabilia, Woolworth's clown prints. Michaelis Monty was well known as a man of influential tastes. On screen, Dracula putrefied spectacularly, maggots bursting from its eye sockets. An entirely apt Jimi Hendrix guitar burst accompanied his death screams. Monty upped the zinth. More noise, more music, more scream. He infilled with more red. The last of Dracula should be a bloody pool on the lining of his opera cape, red on red. "Fuck you, Count," said Peter Cushing, "and the bat you rode in on." It was well said, and Monty's vocals people had taken a lot of care to perfect the actor's clipped voice pattern. Hendrix segued Tchaikovsky, winding up the film with the snatch of Swan Lake that had been heard in the Transylvanian prologue, and the end titles strobe flashed as Cushing led Dean and Streep out of the crypt into the rainbow-bright sunrise that lettered out "The End" in the sky and subliminally flashed an expensive ad for coca drugs. The message pour in the top right of the easel spiraled open. Monty saw an inset of his own doorstep from the POV of the monitor-eyed stone eagle perched atop the lintel. Sally Rhodes stood on his welcome mat, trenchcoat belted tight, hat brim pulled low over her domino breather. She looked the eagle in the eye and gave a tight smile. Monty pulled over the nearest slab and ran the routine checks. The image in the pour proved true. A first-generation unscrambled mimesis. He supposed that he had only had himself to blame for the fact that you couldn't routinely trust anything you saw on television anymore. The household recognized her heat pattern, cross-checked the clearance of the Sally Rhodes agency with the latest listings, and gave him a manual control over the door. He palm-printed an OK, and the pour closed as Sally Rhodes was admitted into his hallway. Monty had scheduled this meeting for late evening in an attempt to avoid embarrassment. He had, of course, been keeping the state police updated on his troubles, as he was obliged by law to do, but it was no secret that Montevideo was financially able to afford access to private sector policing. The Sally Rhodes Agency was known for its discretion, and Monty found that quality worth a hefty annual premium. He was even willing to overlook Sally Rhodes' tactless jibes about his business and taste in objects d'art. In a market rife with piracy, Montevideo rarely suffered from bootlegging, and the last large-scale operation to try infringing its copyrights had been permanently retired, thanks to Sally Rhodes. Monty met her in his gallery. The paintings were asleep, but the room was a whisper with their steady breathing. Sally Rhodes was admiring his shag-pile Rothko. "There is some interesting work being done with sub-sentient jellies and acrylics at the moment, don't you think?" he ventured. The poised young woman turned and held up a hand in mock horror, waving it as if to ward off Dracula with a crucifix. He missed the point. "That shirt," she gasped. It's called a paisley pattern," he told her. "The lemon yellow and eggshell blue combination is my own idea." "You didn't have to tell me, Mickey. My grandmother told me about the 1960s. They must have been hell to live through." "I wouldn't know. I was very small at the time." "And now you're very big?" "Quite." He adjusted his chrome and lucite love beads. "Are you in a position to make a report?" "Only a preliminary. I note that you've lodged provisional declarations of war against Agfa Dai and Disney McDonald's. You know what kind of commitment that will entail." "What choice have I got?" "Someone's been singeing my remix men. With Tarnavero gone, there's a severe crimp in my output. It has to be an alliance among the competition. They want me scuppered before Frankfurt." "Perhaps," said Sally Rhodes. She peeled off her domino and sniffed with distaste the herbal-scented air. "Do you have a room screen handy? I've got a tape to run for you." He accessed the downstairs suite, which came complete with a full editing slab and a glass wall display of Montevideo's top-selling remix jobs: Citizen Kane, Battleship Potemkin, Psycho, Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill, King Kong, High Noon, Double Indemnity, The Best of Sergeant Bilko, The Elvis Autopsy Video, The Seventh Seal, The Breakdancin' Nun. Monty thumb-signed the slab, and a framed poster for the Bob Dylan, Sylvester Stallone, Glenda Jackson, Madonna, Women in Love remix rose into its ceiling slot, revealing a milk-white wall screen. It was the only colorless thing in the house. Sally Rhodes unscrambled the sequence lock on her briefcase and produced a videocassette. It was a Montevideo own-brand product. "This is from Tarnavero's office," she said. "I've established that it was what he was working on when he was killed." "Then it should be Captain Blood?" 1935, Michael Curtis, with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. Warner Brothers, right?" "Your pardon?" He double-taked. "Oh, forgive me. I always forget you're a... what are they called? Film buff." He spat the word with distaste, recalling the petitions that used to flood into his slab. "Let's pass over that, shall we?" she said, shuffling fish notes. "You've kept up on your autopsies, I trust?" "Yes. But let me remind you, Tarnavero was attacked by someone with a long, sharp, heavy blade, a carving knife, a machete, or a sword. He was almost literally hacked to pieces." "Yes, that's why I suspect those Agfa Dai bastards. The multi-knots like to throw in a scare when they open hostilities." In his struggle to swallow Thorn Futura McAlpine before the Combine swallowed him, Monty had authorized as bad or far worse. "And you know what the Axis are like." Being market leader was a precarious position. Since the Troubles started with Trevor, Montevideo had lost over 20% of its employees to the marketplace. Even disemployment was better than being an unmourned casualty in a corporate skirmish. "It may not be that simple, Monty. Have you ever thought to match the methods of assassination used against your people with the properties they were working on?" Monty was startled. "No, why should I?" Sally Rhodes held up her fish. Trevor was the first, 2 months ago. He was blown to bits by some kind of frag charge. He was remixing Battleground. Ruby G was expertly kicked and trampled to death. Her current assignment, the Gold Diggers of 1933. Considine had his throat ripped out by some kind of animal. Remember the werewolf jokes in the newsies? Well, his last property was Lassie Come Home. Do you see it? He wanted it keyed out for him. Sally Rhodes slid Captain Blood into the VCR maw and began to play the buttons. As always, when you slot a cassette at random, the sex scene faded on. This is the sequence Tarnavero was remixing when they got him. We had to clean the blood and guts off the tape. The assessor was clogged. On screen, Errol Flynn was extensively sodomizing the cabin boy. It had seemed wasteful not to feature the star's most legendary endowment in the film, and all this historical research proved that buggery would have been a way of life on the all-male pirate ships of the 17th century. Besides, they had wanted to work up a role for the teenage David Bowie. There was a little ghosting, and Tarnavero's green notation blips came and went in the corner of the image, but otherwise it was fine. It was an effective addition. Sally Rhodes was distracted, not looking at the action, but waiting for something else to appear. Look, here it is. Here's where it happens. She frame froze. Look at this line. There was a thick band of different quality color, crossing the screen like a ripple. She advanced, frame by frame, demonstrating the glitch's progression. It was a diagonal wipe from left to right. Inside the band, the colors were different, a little like the pastel shades of three-strip Technicolor, not very realistic and far too thin for Monty's taste. When the band had passed, all color had gone. Bowie's face faded into Olivia de Havilland's, and a cut later, Errol Flynn had his clothes on. There was a ruckus outside the cabin, and Flynn was bounding, cutlass in hand, to the door. So, this is where Tarnavero broke off. This is the original version. Not quite, said Sally Rhodes, tapping a finger to the screen, initiating pause. A horde of pirate extras cowered in tableau as Captain Blood laid into them. They were typical Warner Brothers swashbuckler extras, scarred, scurvy sea dogs with earrings, 3 or 4 knives apiece, striped headscarves, leather boots, stupid expressions. But in the middle was a balding pirate with coke-doke bottle glasses and a 2-piece whaleskin suit. It was Tarnavero. The woman took her finger from the screen, and action resumed in a long shot. Flynn threw off 2 huge attackers. Tarnavero was in the melee, turning to run. His glasses fell off and were kicked over the side by a sneering Basil Rathbone. The remix man made a dash for safety and tripped over de Havilland's skirts. Flynn smiled, impossibly beautiful in the smoke of battle, and ran the interloper cleanly through. He heaved the body off his cutlass, and Tarnavero fell into the sword-waving throng. The pirates hacked at him merrily. He even got his own close-up, still twitching, eyeballs free-floating, a coil of rope gray under his head. Then he was out of the film, another dead extra, and Flynn was facing up to Rathbone, jeering at the villain's Frenchified ringlets. Monty was appalled. Elaborate, isn't it? He had to agree. It would take expert remixing to do that, but it's pointless. The film went on. Monty waved down the sound, but the black and white figure still danced on the wall. He had to think. Mr. Monty, do you know a Caspasian Kleinzak? Of course. He's a remix man with Agfa Dai. I've been trying to get to him. With the troubles, we'll need to net a few top defectors to keep up our output. He's not up to my standards or Tarnavero's, but he's a professional jobber. Is AD involved in this? Unlikely. I mentioned Kleinzak because he's dead, too. The newsies haven't got it yet, but he's definitely a casualty. I think AD have had others, and there's been a total security clampdown at McDisney World. Someone doesn't like remix men, Mickey. Kleinzak was shot. He was working on My Darling Clementine. Do you know the property? 1946. John Ford with Henry Fonda as Wyatt Earp and Victor Mature as Doc Holliday. 20th Century Fox. You're not the only one who can remember things. AD screwed me out of the rights in a nasty negotiation last year. She smiled. That's the one. AD buy their policing from the Salvation Army. That's fundamentalism for you. I've got a few friends in the Sal, and I was leaked some fish. According to them, Kleinzak was deleted with something exotic. A buntline special. Ever heard of it? No reason you should. It was a white elephant showpiece of the Wild West with an 11-inch barrel. Wyatt Earp had one. Do you see the pattern? The Sal aren't saying any more, but it's my guess that if you were to screen Kleinzak's Clementine, you'd see a Technicolor twitch, and it would wind up with a lab-coated Kraut remix man blundering into the crossfire at the OK Corral and getting his globes shot out. Later, after Sally Rhodes had gone, Michaelis Monty had a few stiff drugs. He was rattled, no doubt about it. In previous corporation wars, the higher echelons had been off limits. You can't negotiate a peace with a frazzled corpse. But this new thing, this campaign of terror, didn't appear to be a particular respecter of the ethics of monetarist diplomacy. He found Sally Rhodes' conclusion unutterably creepy. Someone doesn't like what you do, Mickey, and is taking extreme measures to shut you and everyone else in your line down. He was safe in his household. The defenses were on, the grounds were secure, there were no human agents in the system to turn traitor, and the governing AI had had its loyalties freshly upgraded. Killflies were loose in the corridors of his retreat. He knew his employees referred to it behind his back as the House on Haunted Hill, and were coded to administer lethal injections to any moving thing that didn't match Monty's displacement configurations. He was as protected as a man could be. He sat on the psychedelic bubble couch and looked at his tiger-striped ectomondrian. The painting stirred in its sleep. He let the pleasant warmth of a soother seep through his body, calming him. As he watched, the painting's breathing grew ragged. It died, colors fading to gray, jelly congealing behind glass. It had happened before. A fault in the heating. There was nothing to worry about, the soother in his bloodstream told him. Deep in his brain, an unsoothed fragment of his consciousness screamed. He floated back to his easel room. As he passed the sensors, his body heat registered. Overhead banks of lights lit up, then shut off when he had moved on. There was darkness in front and darkness behind, but he was always in the light, safe in white light. Behind him, black eyes shone in the darkness. Monty heard the swish and turned. He couldn't see, but he had a strong afterimage, a tall man with a heavy cloak. He had to be alone. A 3D wall plan proved it. He showed up as an orange pinpoint, winking in a corridor. There were no other warm bodies in the house. He arrived in the easel room just too late. The twitch was disappearing off the lower right corner of the screen. A black and white picture remained. Monty stood over the easel and watched as the camera tracked around an empty crypt. Lids fell off coffins, and creepy crawlies, giant spiders, rats, and armadillo, scuttled in corners. Dracula's sad-eyed wives waited, infinitely patient, in long white shifts for their master's return. In his system, the soother reached the zenith of its effect. The tranquilizing bulk of the pill had dissolved, putting a potentially dangerous dosage into him, and the emetic core spread in his gut. If he wanted to drug any more, he would have to empty his stomach. He wasn't soothed right now. Fear played his buttons. Icy fingertips keyed his vertebrae. He would have to empty his stomach. His bathroom was mirrored and luxurious, richly carpeted and hung with turquoise and scarlet silks. The design was copied from a Cecil B. DeMille spectacular of the 1920s he had rejected as too outmoded to be worth even a thorough remix. Jewel-encrusted gold taps shone against lime green, veined marble sunken tubs. This was the focus, far more than his austere bedroom, of his fantasies and fulfillments. Monty bent double over a puce and ginger toilet bowl fashioned like a triton's horn and vomited tidily. He slammed down the oyster-shaped lid and sat on it. The emetic had a calming side effect. He felt bad, but was instantly better. He got up and walked to the sink, a mustard replica of the font in Salisbury Cathedral, and washed his face. Behind him, a door silently opened. Monty peered minutely at his face in the mirror. It was possible to be flabby and haggard at the same time. He bared his teeth. They were filmed yellow. Then the thing took him. He saw the hand that gripped his jaw and felt the one in his hair, but neither showed in the mirror. He was held fast by emptiness. Arms like metal bands gripped him. Angling his eyes down, he could see the dark sleeve of a dinner jacket and the black folds of a cloak, but in the mirror, on screen, he was struggling only with himself. His paisley collar was yanked away from his neck. Cold lips clamped to his throat. Ice-chipped teeth sank in. The turquoise and scarlet faded first, turned dead and gray. Then his shirt calmed down and resolved itself into a dingy, indeterminate smear. His vision slowly bled, the technicolor twitch passing from left to right before his eyes. He felt himself emptying out. Feebly, he raised a hand to push away the unseen face pressed to his throat. He had no more feeling. His hand flapped, chilly and wet, in his field of vision. The last things he saw were his fingers, stained forever with the black of his own blood. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.